I never thought my downfall would come with catered sandwiches and a PowerPoint. My name's Emily Daniels. I'm 58 years old. And 3 weeks ago, I was publicly voted out of the community center I built from the ground up. I've lived in Pine Hollow, Colorado, my entire life. It's a small town tucked between cattle pastures and ski brochures. Too rural for tourists, too progressive for state funding. 20 years ago, I left my job in Denver, sold my condo, and moved back to care for my mother. While doing that, I started a free book exchange out of an abandoned post office. That tiny exchange grew into Pine Hollow Community Center, complete with a tech lab, heritage archive, green roof garden, and youth mentorship programs. It wasn't just a building. It was the town's soul. And now it's gone. Or at least, it's no longer mine. The people who took it from me? They didn't break in. They smiled through every step. The worst one? My cousin Dean. He's our town's youngest ever mayor, all charm and spreadsheets. When he returned from his MBA in Austin, I was the first person to welcome him with open arms and hand him a seat on the center's advisory board. I thought we were building something together, bridging old values and new vision. Turns out, his vision didn't include me. I should have seen it coming. The center had started getting media attention. Articles about rural innovation, tech-nature integration, even a podcast episode featuring our agri-robotics internship program. I noticed how often Dean's name appeared in the coverage, even when he had nothing to do with those projects. Then came the private investor interest. Dean brought in a group called Horizons Development to explore opportunities. I raised concerns. Horizons had a reputation for gutting cultural centers and turning them into luxury co-working spaces. Dean brushed me off. This could secure our future, Emily. We're talking economic sustainability. I wasn't convinced. Neither were the other two longtime board members, Lydia, a retired librarian, and Frank, a local farmer. So Dean did what most polished professionals do when met with resistance. He changed the board. 2 new members were added. One worked for Horizons. The other was Dean's former professor. Last Thursday, I was called into an advisory meeting. I knew something was off when the room smelled like lemon water and the agenda had been printed in color. Dean stood at the head of the table, looking every bit the young visionary mayor. Emily, he said, we're restructuring the mission of Pine Hollow Center. He clicked through a slideshow filled with buzzwords: market positioning, urban synergy, cultural monetization. Then he dropped the bomb. A formal motion to transition ownership of the center's assets to a private foundation, one controlled by Horizons Development. All we need, he said, smiling like it was a wedding toast, is your signature as the founding executive. I looked around. Lydia and Frank were gone. The new board nodded politely. You're holding us back, Dean added, his voice smooth. Your vision was good, for its time, but Pine Hollow is moving forward. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stared at the laminated mission statement still taped to the back wall. The one Dean helped me write 10 years ago. Rooted in history, growing with purpose, powered by people. I stood up. If you want my signature, I said, you'll have to send legal. And I walked out. I thought that would be the end of it, that I'd go home, grieve, maybe start over. But I didn't expect what came the next morning. A friend from City Records texted me a document she wasn't supposed to see. Horizons had already filed trademark paperwork for several of our programs. The youth workshop names, the digital archive slogan, even our community garden initiative. Only, they had no legal right to do that. And they definitely didn't know what else I had in my possession. Because 15 years ago, I started documenting everything. And what they didn't know? Was that the only working blueprint for the full Pine Hollow model? The curriculum, the digital archives, the funding pathways, was sitting on a flash drive in my old farmhouse drawer. And they'd just tried to steal it. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at that damn flash drive. 15 years of notes, blueprints, curriculum plans, original video interviews with war veterans and farm workers, even the grant proposal that won us state funding back in 2014. All of it. Mine. Ours. Built by neighbors who donated time, stories, recipes, labor. And Horizons had filed trademarks on our work. I wanted to scream, but instead I made tea. And I thought. By morning, I drove out to the Daniels family farm. 30 acres of land that hadn't seen a harvest since my dad passed. It's where I grew up, where I learned to fix fences and stack hay bales and cook cornbread from scratch. I hadn't been back in years, not since the arthritis got bad. I didn't come for nostalgia. I came because no one ever checked the old red barn. That barn had something Horizons lawyers didn't know existed. 10 dusty banker's boxes filled with physical archives. Contracts, original programming designs, youth waivers, participant feedback. Even letters from state officials thanking me for creating a replicable model for rural tech inclusion. Most of it signed. Dated. Some notarized. Horizons could trademark flashy names, but they didn't have proof of origin. I did. Still, I wasn't naive. Legal ownership doesn't always mean power. Not in a town where people smile and stab in the same breath. I tried reaching out to Dean. I sent him a short message. We need to talk. You've gone too far. He didn't respond, but someone else did. A notice arrived at my door the next day, delivered by courier in a stiff black envelope. Formal cease and desist, unauthorized use of town programming. I nearly dropped my tea. They were threatening me. Me, the person who created those programs. On my time, with my money, using donated materials and unpaid labor from volunteers who signed up out of love, not profit. That night I broke down. Not from fear, from sheer heartbreak. How do you explain the feeling of seeing your life's work weaponized against you? I cried harder than I had in years. Snotty, ugly crying. The kind where you feel like your ribs might crack. Because I realized something awful. They were going to erase me. Not just fire me, not just restructure me out. They were going to rewrite history and scrub my name off the chalkboard, off the website, off the wall. Make it look like Dean and his polished partners dreamed it all up on some corporate retreat. And for a brief moment, I almost gave up. What was I gonna do? Fight a stacked board and a billion-dollar development firm with a flash drive and a barn full of memories? But then, a voice popped into my inbox. It was from Maria. She had interned at the center 5 years ago when she was 16, the kind of girl who always smelled like printer ink and asked too many questions, in the best way. She was in college now, studying archival science. Her email subject line just said, "Miss Emily, please tell me this isn't true." She had seen Dean's new press release, announcing Horizons Pine Hollow Innovation Campus, with quotes from smiling execs about creating a future-focused ecosystem for digital-first rural engagement. Not one mention of me, or the actual residents. I wouldn't be where I am today without your mentorship, Maria wrote. If there's anything I can do, say the word. I read it 5 times, and I realized I wasn't alone. Dean might have the title, the building, the legal team, but I had the people. The real Pine Hollow. The one that grew from hands and hearts, not renderings and revenue slides. So I replied, yes, there is something you can do. And that's when the idea started forming. Not revenge, reclamation. I stayed up all night drafting a proposal for a new project. One that had lived in my notebook for years, but never had the funding. The Living Archive. A digital library of oral histories, creative works, and community solutions, entirely resident-led, owned and protected. By sunrise, I'd registered a domain name and reached out to an old friend, Aria West, an intellectual property attorney who'd spent the last decade helping artists and indigenous communities reclaim their stolen work. And when I told her what Dean and Horizons had done, she went silent for a second. Then she said, I'll take the case. Pro bono. I stared at my screen, and for the first time in days, I smiled. Because they might have stolen my title. but they didn't realize. I still owned the roots, and I was about to dig deeper than they ever imagined. I didn't go back to town for almost a week. Not because I was scared. I just couldn't stomach walking past the building that used to feel like home and seeing it covered in sleek new banners with fonts that looked like they were ordered off Canva. Horizons Pine Hollow, where future takes root. What root? The only thing they'd planted was concrete. Instead, I stayed at the farm and worked. I scanned every document from those dusty archive boxes, every hand-drawn program map, every audio clip of students describing what the center meant to them. Some of the files made me cry. Kids who were now adults saying things like, "This place made me believe I had something worth offering." Horizons didn't build that. I did. The flash drive became a server. The server became a secure cloud drive. And by the end of that week, I had launched a beta site for the Living Archive. It wasn't pretty, just a basic layout. Dark background, a logo that looked like it was designed in Microsoft Paint. But it was real. And it was ours. Meanwhile, Dean was soaking up interviews. Local newspapers, regional TV, even a podcast called The Civic Shift, where he bragged about revitalizing rural knowledge through scalable infrastructure. He used my words. Twisted, repackaged, scrubbed of meaning. And I'll admit, I lost it for a minute. Not proud of it, but I threw a rock at the barn wall, left a crack in the plaster. My dad built that wall. That night, I finally answered Maria's call. She wasn't alone. She'd pulled together a group of former interns, program alums, even a retired teacher who used to run the community art classes. They didn't want to talk. They wanted to help. So I gave them access to the drive, the files, the old programs, the curriculum. And together we started reaching out to neighboring towns, offering the Living Archive model as a free, replicable template. No licensing, no strings, just dignity. Then something wild happened. One of the local school districts accepted. They asked if I could come present the program to their board in person. So I did. And right there in a folding chair-filled conference room with an overhead projector that still made a humming noise, I gave the talk I was supposed to give at Pine Hollow 5 years ago, about using community memory as a source of innovation, about preserving identity before scaling impact. They signed on the spot. 2 days later, I got an email from Horizons, subject line, "Urgent, infringement concerns." It was polite, corporate, vaguely threatening. They said the Living Archive name was confusingly similar to their new Rootstream Knowledge Hub and could be seen as intentional brand dilution. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled tea on my keyboard. Because they had no idea what I was about to drop. See, 3 months ago, before they filed any trademarks, Area helped me file a full patent on the original Pine Hollow model. The design, the instructional flow, even the community contribution framework, all with timestamps and original author attribution. And the kicker? That patent had just been approved. I sent them the certificate, just the image, no caption. They never replied. But the next day, their press site went temporarily offline for scheduled maintenance. And here's the twist, the part that knocked the wind out of me. Dean called me. Not a text, not an email, a phone call. I didn't recognize the number at first, but when I picked up, there was just silence. Then a breath. "I didn't know they were going to erase you," he said quietly. "I thought we were building something better." I didn't say anything. Because what do you say to someone who gutted you with a smile? He kept talking. Said he was being phased out too. Horizons was bringing in new executives. He sounded lost. Like a kid who got in over his head and was finally realizing he couldn't swim. "What do you want from me, Dean?" I asked. His answer? I need to know if I ruined everything. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. He wasn't evil. He was just weak. And weak people in powerful rooms do far more damage than villains ever could. We said nothing else. He hung up. I sat there for a long time after, just staring at the screen. hands cold. Because when betrayal comes from someone you love, even someone you're mad at, it doesn't just break your heart, it disorients you. You start questioning your own memory, your own worth, your own story. If you've ever been made to feel invisible in a room you built, I see you. And I hope, wherever you are, you're writing your own damn blueprint too. Right arrow. I've never been good at playing the victim. So when Dean tried to erase my name from the very programs I spent half my life building, I didn't collapse. I cataloged every file, every grant, every community signature, every curriculum draft with names and dates and margins scribbled by me in pencil because I never did like typing out lesson plans. Then I called Aria. God bless Aria West. Part lawyer, part bloodhound, part angel with a vengeance streak. She read through the trademark threats Horizons had sent and just said, "Oh, honey, they're standing on a trapdoor and don't even know it." And that's when we pulled it. Turns out all those innovative initiatives Horizons was repackaging and selling to regional investors, they weren't just based on my work. They were my work, verbatim. And worse, they used exact phrasing from archived community submissions. Poems, gardening logs, audio interviews, none of which they had permission to monetize. Aria filed the full copyright infringement claim on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday at noon, their fancy landing page was offline. By Thursday, Dean's PR manager had locked down all comment sections across social media. And me? I kept quiet. On the surface. But behind the scenes, I was moving faster than I'd moved in years. Remember the team of former interns and volunteers I mentioned? Maria, her crew, the retired art teacher? We didn't just build a website. We built a movement. We called it the Rootworks Network. A co-op of small towns, tribal educators, local farmers, and elders who had been left behind by these slick revitalization campaigns. And instead of selling them a model, we taught them how to build their own. Free. We hosted Zoom sessions, pop-up workshops. One town even held a memory fair where teenagers recorded oral histories in a church basement and uploaded them to our shared archive. And the best part? Word spread. Fast. Turns out, rural communities across the state had also been burned by Horizons in one way or another. It wasn't just Pine Hollow. It was a pattern. And once we showed receipts, media outlets came crawling. But I wasn't interested in fame. I was interested in leverage. So I waited until a regional conference, the Western Civic Futures Summit, where Horizons was set to give their keynote presentation on empowering underserved communities through design thinking. I registered as an attendee, sat in the fourth row, wore my best denim jacket and boots that still had soil from the farm. Dean stepped on stage, still polished, still smiling, still selling a dream built on my broken trust. He made it 6 minutes into his speech before the projector cut out. Static. Then silence. Then the screen lit up again. And there it was. A video of my original Pine Hollow presentation, the one I'd recorded 10 years ago for a state grant proposal. Word for word, side by side with the slides Dean was presenting now. They matched. Perfectly. Gasps in the room. Cameras up. People whispering. And then, my face. On screen. A side-by-side comparison. My signature. My timestamp. Aria had submitted the footage as evidence of infringement and had worked with the event organizers, who had recently received legal notice themselves for promoting stolen content. The host took the mic. Due to an unresolved copyright violation involving proprietary programming from the Pine Hollow model, Horizons' presentation has been suspended pending legal review. Dean's mouth opened, but no words came out. I stood up. Didn't say anything. Just nodded once. And walked out. But the real twist? It wasn't that we'd proven they stole it. It was what came later that night. Maria called, her voice shaking. "Emily," she whispered, "you need to see this." She sent a screenshot of an internal memo from Horizons, leaked by an anonymous employee. It detailed a strategy not just to rebrand my programs, but to intentionally phase out local contributors in order to streamline narrative control and limit claim complexity. They hadn't just erased me. They'd planned to erase everyone. The elders, the kids, the undocumented farmers. Anyone without the resources to fight back. My hands went cold. Because it wasn't just personal anymore. It was calculated. Systemic. And that's when something in me cracked wide open. I wasn't just fighting for my legacy now. I was fighting for all of us who've ever been silenced by polished people in boardrooms who think real stories are just raw material for their next campaign. And if you've ever been dismissed, talked over, or erased, just know this. Your story is still yours, and there's power in telling it out loud. I didn't think they'd actually cave. But 3 weeks after the summit disaster, after the footage went viral and 3 partner towns pulled out of Horizon's expansion plan, I got an email with the subject line, Request for Resolution, Pine Hollow IP Rights. It was from Horizon's legal counsel. Cold, formal, panicked beneath the surface. They wanted to settle. They offered a licensing deal. Quiet, sealed, 6 figures. No press release. No public acknowledgement. Just money for silence. I didn't even read past paragraph 3. I forwarded it to Aria and replied with 2 lines. Not interested in erasure. Try again. The next offer came directly from the interim CEO. This one had different terms. A public apology, signed and published. Full attribution of my authorship for all derivative works. A 5-year licensing deal at triple the original offer. Immediate termination of all Horizon's Pine Hollow initiatives. And most importantly, the right to maintain the Living Archive as a standalone, independently governed resource, with funding matched by the state under a newly approved cultural preservation grant. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I needed to think. Because I wanted to feel it. That quiet shift. The click of the balance tipping back. I accepted. The next Monday, the apology letter hit the front page of the regional news. Dean's name was on it. So was the phrase, "We deeply regret failing to honor the origins of Pine Hollow's programming and the contributions of its founder, Emily Daniels." People in town stopped me at the co-op to say they read it. Some were sheepish. A few cried. Lydia mailed me a postcard with a hand-drawn daisy on it and 1 line inside. "You were always right to fight." Dean? He never contacted me again. Last I heard, he left town. Took a consulting job out east. Quiet exit. No farewell party, no ribbon cuttings, just gone. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. Closure isn't loud. It's not a standing ovation or a plaque with your name engraved on it. It's walking past the building they tried to gut and hearing a 4th grader say, "I recorded my grandpa's story yesterday. He said he never thought anybody cared." That's what matters. This month, the Rootworks Network signed its 50th partner town. Our youth-led workshops are being added to state education frameworks. We're training rural teens to become memory keepers, not just storytellers, protectors of truth. And when people ask me why I didn't take the hush money, I tell them this, because silence is how they win. And I've had enough of that for 1 lifetime. The lesson I took away: don't assume the people in charge know what they're doing. And never underestimate the power of documentation, especially when no one's listening. If any part of this reminded you of something you've been through, I hope you'll share it in the comments. Not just for you, but for the next person about to get erased without even realizing it. And if you want to hear more real stories like this, you know where that little red button is. Thanks for letting me finally say this out loud.